When we learn how to fly, one of the hardest parts is just communicating, learning how to talk on the radios. But when we start speaking with air traffic control and training, it's another level. The push to talk button becomes the push to think button. When you're training, you get taught and you learn the right format for the radio calls and what you're supposed to say and what you're supposed to read back. And it gets you started. It gets you enough. But there's so much more to learn after you get out there. And most of it arrives in these subtleties. It's in the silences. It's in the knowing when not to speak, when you want to be heard. These paradoxes, these strange situations you get into are just little wrinkles. They're not problems, but they're enough to throw you off when you're just getting started. We were fortunate enough to interview our friend Romeo Hotel on the Midlife Pilot podcast. And one of the things I wanted to do was to get his feedback on a particular radio call that I had, an interaction with a center controller that wasn't negative, it wasn't bad. I just wanted to make sure that I was doing something that on the Opposing Bases podcast, they always talk about this, reading the room. How do you learn to read the room with air traffic control? Just because you have the right to talk or a reason to talk doesn't mean that you always should, at least in that moment. So what I want to do is I wanted to set up this clip and have you watch it and listen carefully. Notice the spaces, notice the waiting. Pay attention to the details, take it all in, and then listen to our friend Romeo Hotel break it down in a way that I think a lot of pilots could learn from.
November 5116 Lima, contact Atlanta Center 133.6.
33.6, 16 Lima.
Somebody else checked on who was on 701 Whiskey Golf, roger that, Atlanta altimeter 2999.
Atlanta Center, Cherokee, November 5116 Lima, 4,500 climbing, 7,500.
All right, I had a couple people checked on. 827 Charlie Mike, Knoxville approach 123.9er.
Knoxville 23.9er, 827 Charlie Mike.
Allegiant 1432, Atlanta Center 12437. Allegiant 1432, Atlanta Center 12437. Thank you. Or 5116 Lima, you checked on?
Affirmative, 16 Lima, 4,800 climbing, 7,500.
New code for you, squawk 2543.
2543, 16 Lima.
Oh, yeah.
That video has so much more in it than I think most people would realize. There's a lot going on the air traffic side that we tried to explain, and it's once you realize it's happening, it's going to make you a better pilot. That controller's talking on multiple frequencies. And 16 Lima can transmit on one at a time and listen to one or two, right? You can monitor your second radio, but pilots cannot transmit on multiple frequencies with the touch of one button. They have to go back and forth. It's one frequency at a time when you push to talk. A controller is able to speak and transmit and receive, could be 10 frequencies at a time, depending on what's combined, what sectors are open. If it's all their airspace in the middle of a midnight shift, it could be 12 frequencies. And it's hard for pilots to wrap their head around that. But when you checked in, your timing was really good. You waited till there was hey, there's nothing else happening on another frequency, which some of your pilots in this room may not realize that could be happening. I was so proud of you for waiting. You didn't do
you notice that when I flip-flopped, the first thing I heard was who had checked in.
Yep.
So
and
I already knew that there was
think,
something amiss.
You didn't think it had to be me. Well, no, because you didn't say anything yet. So it couldn't have been you. I really like that. Then you waited a little bit. And then when you went on, despite your best efforts, you can't control that other pilots checked in on the other frequencies that you cannot hear. They're on other numbers. They're not on the same frequency. And you realize that. You didn't freak out. It's not the end of the world. You're a VFR climbing at 4,500 feet, going, 90 knots over the ground. Nothing bad is going to happen in this 5-10 seconds that you wait. So really good job being patient, because some pilots have to get that button pushed. I have got to check in. The world's going to end if I don't. So that was the first thing I was excited about. The second thing I was excited about was when the controller got upset that there were multiples, you didn't just take it as a cue. Fine, you waited again. And really, you read the room. That's the thing I wanted to make sure I said. You read the room. You did a really good job with that. And if you didn't understand the dynamics of that, what was happening, it's important to realize that controller is hearing from multiple voices in the same headset, and they don't necessarily know what frequency they're coming from. They could look, you could see these little lights blink, but that's kind of next level stuff. They're looking at their scope, not the radio stack at the same time. So instructors have got to spend a little bit of time explaining what just happened in that 2-minute clip with pilots with minimal radio time, so they understand where they kind of fit into that. That was complex, and it looked simple, but there was a lot going on.
The restraint really in that call for me was I never knew that he heard me ever at that point, because he was saying, okay, I got a bunch of people checking in. I was actually surprised when he said, 5016 Lima, was that you checking on? That was kind of the reward.
It was a reward. And I felt as excited as you did when it finally happened. When he came to you without you saying, I'm here again, proves what we're trying to explain here, right? Be patient. Understand where your airplane in that scenario fits in. And something we haven't talked about yet is maybe a minute before you checked in, he took that handoff. He knows you're eventually going to check in. It's not a 16 Lima. Who is that? He knows you're coming. He took that handoff from somebody, and you're on his to-do list, but not the end of the world if you don't communicate the second you switch that frequency. So
he was looking for the Nordo Allegiant. It's really what he's doing.
Yeah, really, really good job. You let him deal with the other stuff at the same time, and you didn't lose your mind over it. He gave you a different squawk, which confuses people too. That happens when you go from center boundary to another one, more often than not, actually. Really, really good job.
This could also apply to life. You don't just barge into a room and start talking, or at least you shouldn't. Thank you, Romeo Hotel, for taking the time with us on the Midlife Pilot podcast and sharing your air traffic control wisdom.
November 5116 Lima, contact Atlanta Center 133.6.
33.6, 16 Lima.
Somebody else checked on who? 771 Whiskey Golf, roger that, Atlanta altimeter 2999.
Atlanta Center, Cherokee, November 5116 Lima, 4,500 climbing, 7,500.
All right, I had a couple people checked on. 827 Charlie Mike, Knoxville approach 123.9er.
Knoxville 239er, 827 Charlie Mike.
Allegiant 1432, Atlanta Center 12437. Allegiant 1432, Atlanta Center 12437. Thank you. 5116 Lima, you checked on?
Affirmative, 16 Lima, 4,800 climbing, 7,500.
New code for you, squawk 2543.
2543, 16 Lima.